Jump into your VHS tapes because we're going to talk about Public Access, the role playing game, today.
Game read through with friend Lex Mandrake in the top right corner.
Hello, everybody. Jordan here, the PH is silent, and this is Game Reviews with Lex, with my good friend Lex up in the top right corner. And today we are going to talk about a game called Public Access that when you told me about this, you were very, very excited. And I'm now excited to finally go through it with you because it looks like it's touching all of those nostalgia retro technology feels that I have. Like the font, the play button, the like distortion on the screen.
It's all here.
It's all
here. Oh golly, yeah. Okay, well,
what is this?
let's get into it.
Yeah,
let's do it. Scroll up to the top of my notes. I have a lot of notes.
Oh, if I zoom
Public
in,
access.
are there faces or anything hidden? No, it's just pixels.
I wouldn't be surprised.
But I wouldn't be.
So,
It's kind of like that.
Public Access is a powered by the apocalypse horror RPG released in 2023 by Jason Cordova. Now, side note on Cordova, he runs the Gauntlet, which is a big gaming community, mostly focused on story games. Okay. They have a digital magazine where they print different supplements and adventures. And they have some other RPG titles like the Trophy RPG, which some point we should get around to talking about. It looks very interesting.
Yeah.
But Public Access is a game about vibes. This whole game, seriously, this is a game that prescribes a very specific genre and is built around telling stories within that genre. And that genre specifically is like cryptids, creepypasta, retro public access television,
Slender Man kind of stuff is what I was getting from it. Those kind of vibes.
Very much. Like if Slender Man was around, if a lot of those online spooky things were around in the late 80s, early 90s, right? And were seen instead of through the lens of the internet, they were seen through the lens of public access cable television. So that's the whole vibe of this, and I want to give a shout out to Ben Mansky, who does the layout here.
Yeah.
So he and the other artists that work on this, of which there are several, do all sorts of cool stuff with like analog video distortion, and it's super creepy and it's super evocative, and it just like I said, this is a game about vibes. And man, that layout and that art really nails the vibe. So,
I really want a physical copy of this in a clamshell VHS like holder.
That's the way to do it.
Like, wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah. Ironically, maybe or coincidentally, clamshell VHS is integral to the stories you tell in this game.
Oh, there we go.
So in Public Access, you play the Deep Lake Latchkeys, which is a group of people who all grew up in the town of Deep Lake, New Mexico. Now, when the game takes place, it's 2004, so 20 years ago, and you and the other Latchkeys have all returned to this town, which you grew up in, to uncover the mystery behind a strange public access TV station called TV Odyssey that was around while you were kids growing up there in the late 80s / early 90s before the TV station mysteriously and suddenly vanished. So now you're going around town searching for clues and being beset by terrifying paranormal events.
Yeah, and I read this and like the town says, it caught fire and burned down, but there's no evidence of that whatsoever. So it is just like a mysterious like welcome to Night Vale, it's just gone kind of a thing.
Yes. So like I was saying, this game is very specific, right? The room that we have to play in here is less with like the setting and the kind of characters. I mean, there's a little bit of room with the characters, but like I said, you are this specific kind of person and this is your backstory, right? The room we have to play with here is more of the kinds of spooky scenarios that play out, and the fact that this is a story game, as we're going to talk about with the mechanics, so there's way more back and forth in terms of how the story unfolds between the players and the game master, known here as the Keeper, more so at least than a traditional RPG, so there's much more sort of flexibility to the narrative in that way. Now let's jump into the rules. now we've sort of cleared that intro. This is page 9. I got one page number for you.
But you have the spreads, right? So, oh wait, it's
I-
not. It's page 9, gameplay basics. Is that what we're at?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And yeah, so you've got abilities, right? Or ability scores, rather. They are vitality, composure, reason, presence, and sensitivity. And those pretty much do what you'd expect from those names, right? And the score ranges from -3 to +3. There is a 2d6 plus modifier mechanic. This is, the Powered by the Apocalypse style mechanic where you're trying to hit, certain integers within that dice roll.
It's not the binary pass fail. There's like that level with Powered by the Apocalypse, which is what they're doing with the 2d6. Like,
so you're either failing or you're succeeding with a cost, or you're just succeeding, or you're succeeding with a benefit, right? This game has advantage disadvantage, which in Powered by the Apocalypse terms means you're rolling 3d6 and you're keeping either the 2 better ones or the 2 worse ones, depending. And this game also has the keys, which are like a meta currency that allows you to bump a die result like up 1 category, right? So if you just failed, you can bump it up to succeed with a consequence, or you could bump succeed to a consequence up with just succeed, or so on and so forth. And then we get into, once we get to page 13, we get to the moves. There are 4 moves, and again, this is a Powered by the Apocalypse thing. Moves are basically your actions that you can take. The day move, the night move, the meddling move, and the nostalgic move. So the day move is kind of what you expect, right? It's you try to perform an action, and there's some kind of risk involved. But with the day move,
why is it called the day move though? Because usually moves are like I don't know, I attack with my sword, or I calm the monster down. I thought, like in Powered by the Apocalypse.
Yeah. So with this, it's like you're doing your thing, but if you're doing it during the day, and there are different phases, right? Because this is a horror game, so when you do things during the day, they're inherently less terrifying and less bad, right, than if you do them at night. So when you do something during the day, you say, okay, Keeper, this is what I'm afraid is going to happen. And now I'm going to roll, and if I fail, the thing that I fear is going to happen. And the Keeper will tell you how it unfolds, but like you kind of are deciding what the terrifying thing is that's going to happen to you.
Okay.
Right?
So any move made during the day would have this added onto it, right? Like, because a move could be I'm doing my vitality move for whatever reason, or I'm making a roll.
If you're trying to do if you're trying to do vitality, like you're trying to break down a door, right? You would be like, I roll 2d6, I add my vitality modifier, like +1 or whatever, and then the game or the Keeper says, okay, well, what's the worst thing that could happen to you right now? and you go like, oh, I don't know, I dislocate my shoulder.
Yeah.
Down the door. And then you roll, and it's like, okay, well, I failed my roll, then that's what happens. And then the game master, or the Keeper rather, will describe how that happens, or you'll just succeed and you'll do the thing. The night move is different in that you say what your worst case scenario is, and then the Keeper makes it worse.
Oh.
So, yeah, because it's nighttime, so everything's worse. And then the game gives you the option of like, if you want to back out at that point before the roll is even made, you can. But the Keeper is going to tell you up front, okay, your horrible scenario, this is what I'm going to add to it to make it even more horrible. Those are the stakes for this roll right now. So
I like that. I mean, that for a horror game, like I'm already feeling it. And we're not even playing the game, but when you start thinking like, well, what's the scariest thing or what's the worst thing that could happen? And you're like, okay. And then you know that the Keeper's going to take it up a notch. Like, yes, you dislocated your shoulder. You also broke through the door and it's covered in spider webs on the inside or something. And it's like, like, I don't know. There's like some creepy stuff you could do with that.
Yeah. The meddling move, third move, is about gathering clues. So it's like you're rolling your 2d6, you're adding your stat, but you're trying to gather clues, and the Keeper will give you clues in accordance with how well you roll.
Nice. Okay.
The nostalgic move is for healing. So when you get hurt, because this game doesn't have hit points, you're taking on like conditions, like you're fatigued, you're terrified, I don't know, stuff like that. And yeah, the nostalgic move is you think back to a simpler time. Again, this move also drives home the theming of the game of like, oh, we're looking back at the late 80s, early 90s thing. So you do that, you go to your happy place, and then you get to remove a condition.
Okay.
So those are the main like kind of roles or ways you're going to interact with the game world.
Mm-hmm.
The next big rules thing is answering a question. So this game is about unraveling mysteries, right? Strange paranormal things. And answering a question is like how you do that, right? So there's a fun little mechanic about it, about how the mystery is solved, where like different mysteries have value numbers. And when you decide you're going to try and solve it, you be like, okay, this is how many clues we've accumulated as a group. Do we think we can try and solve this? If we decide we think we can, the group of players figures out what the solution to the mystery is, right? Not the keeper, but the players do. And then they get to roll and they get to add the clues that they assembled. And again, you're rolling with a Powered by the Apocalypse style roll, right? So then it's either exactly what the players think happened, if they roll really well, or it's kind of what they think happened, but the keeper introduces a thing, or they're totally off base, and the keeper's like, nope, that's not what happened at all, right? So it's,
But does
again,
the
it's like
does the keeper finish the game at that point with his or opening up, like?
Or her.
Or her, sorry. Thank you.
Or there, you know? But yeah, I think I'm a little unclear about it, and this is my own idiocy for like not playing a lot of story games, but I'm not 100% sure on the answer to that question.
Yeah.
I think that they do, but it's just like it ends more badly.
Yeah.
For the
Which
players,
is like fun
right?
for story games. You're just like, oh,
Yeah.
well. And then you try again with new characters or something. So, yeah.
They give an example of play, and it talks about how like there's no canonical answers to the kinds of questions in these scenarios. Rather, the scenarios will give you ideas of like, will give the keeper things of like, okay, if the players have done this thing or this thing within the scenario, now they can try and activate the end of it because they've like reached that point. But
Okay.
they still get to decide like what the mystery was, you know? So it's more about like the keeper deciding when story beats happen and sort of navigating tension, but then the players still have a strong hand in developing the plot. So, you know, strong story game elements, pretty cool. After that, we get some character sheet things. Character sheet in this is very well laid out. There's really, really great layout in the book as to what all the sections of the character sheet entail. There's, you know, talks a lot about character advancement, like how that happens. And then we get into this really nice play structure, which this is page like 21, 22. And the play structure divides the day into 4 segments. So you've got dawn, day, dusk, and night. And as we talked about earlier, day and night are mostly when you're making your rolls. It's like when you're interacting with the world is in one of those 2 phases, and one is more dangerous than the other. And then dawn and dusk are also really interesting because dawn is when you do all your upkeep and like your bookkeeping of like, okay, what happened during yesterday?
Okay.
And how are we readjusting? Like figuring out experience, figuring out conditions, like what are all these things that need to be decided. So that's what the dawn phase is. And then the dusk phase can also be some of that, but it can also involve watching a videotape. The clamshell tapes, Jordan. One of the narrative crux of the game, the Odyssey tapes. And on page 24, there's like this great picture of one. It's so good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Fireside 01.
So these are tapes from the public access TV station, and you can find them in game. I think you might start with one, and then you can find more. And it's basically like when you play them, there's usually some like weird surreal stuff. And what happens in them ends up like echoing things that will happen later in the game. So they're like weirdly prophetic. And they also can just like freak you out, and they can kind of affect how the kinds of things that happen in the night phase, which is obviously the phase after you would watch the tape. There's also a fun thing in here about white tapes that are just like white noise, but they're pure white signal, which is like a connection to the other side. And if you watch one, your player can be like removed from the game.
Oh.
It's wild. So, but that's the whole player section of the book, pretty much.
Okay.
The first half, that's all the player stuff. The second half of the book is all the stuff for the keeper, the game master. And I don't want to go into detail on that because, I mean, just save a little bit, but also it's all the behind the screens thing. So if you're going to save anything for the people buying the book, I feel like that's the thing. It actually gives, this is the coolest thing, and I don't remember where it is in here, but it's so, so good. There's tons of examples of play. That's really nice.
Yeah.
Love that. Talks about how to create a mystery and the anatomy of it. Okay. This is awesome. Mysteries or scenarios in this game have their own character sheets. So
I did see that earlier. Yeah. I thought that was
so
really
it's
cool.
like the different sections of the character sheet or scenario sheet have like, these are some clues that you can find for it. These are rewards. These are dangers. These are NPCs. And I've never seen a game do something like that. And I don't know, maybe this is like a story game thing and I'm just not familiar with it. But I think it's such a cool idea because it's like, the game master gets character sheets for their scenarios. And there's also like an NPC who, if there's advice on like running a campaign, right? So you can run this as scenarios, like one shots or whatever, or you can string them together as a campaign. And then it gives you advice for how to structure the campaign, or a framework rather, on how to do it. And it involves this NPC called the Big Man. And I don't want to give anything away, but it's like a really cool NPC idea, and it talks about how to use them within different parts of the campaign, and it's surreal and creepy. It's kind of Twin Peaksy, and it's great. And then just more practical game master advice, tons of it, and it's all really useful and nifty.
There's a good area here for like safety tools, which I think is always
also
great
helpful,
to include, especially in a horror game. And so I like that a lot. They have X card and a bunch of other. It's really cool. I would play this. This would be a fun Halloween game, I think.
It feels so much. I think that even though it gives a lot of really great keeper advice on how to run this, it's still, to someone who's new to story games, it might be a little daunting because like you're aiming for a very specific vibe with this game, right? But luckily, if you buy it, it comes with a ton of stuff. The character sheets, obviously, the scenario character sheets, reference cards, handout things for players to keep track of stuff, for keepers to keep track of stuff, but then also like 4 or 5 adventures. They're all like pamphlet sized, right? So they're like one shot effectively, but they're like all really cool and they all fit with the theming. So if you did this campaign, it asks a lot of you in terms of running thematically, but it goes out of its way to give you as many tools to help you do that as possible. So I think, I wouldn't even worry too much if you're new to, maybe not to story games, but maybe to like this particular kind of subgenre. If you don't have any experience with it, I think there's plenty of material that you'll be fine there. You just may want to, have a grip on story games before you try to run it. That would be my only caveat
I would agree.
for this game. Yeah. Oh, and for any story game, really. Because I think with you and I, with our audience, with you and I and with our audience, we know trad games a lot better, right? Like we know D&D because that's mostly our background, and then we can get into OSR stuff because that feels like boiled down D&D. So it's still like the narrative leap is very easy for us to do, and I think that's true of a lot of people. But in story games, I think for you and I and maybe our audience, that leap might be a little farther. So, maybe try to see if you can play this before you run it, I would say.
Yeah, I think I think you're right. It's funny, though, because, like, I don't feel that way at all about, like, I think that's right about our audience and stuff like that. But I also I run a lot of Kids on Bikes, and that's all just like one-shot story game stuff. And you have stats and things like that, but it's really less about like finding treasure and rolling what you're good at so much as I'm going to force you to roll this one because you made a bad choice. You're like, oh, and so, and I have a lot of fun with those. And that's also a game where I don't know the ending to whatever conflict we came up with. And the players have to really like figure it out while they're going through. So, public access, it's $15 on Drive Through RPG. I think you could print this out really well and have a cool like little zine book to carry around if you want to just like read through it like I do. So I love the Arizona sign, the Deep Lake sign, and just the layout's really good. So hats off to you, Ben Mansky.
Yeah, and Jason Cordova.
Yeah, you guys made a cool game.
It's so cool. This game is so, oh my gosh. It's all vibes. And it's really, it accomplishes it so well. It's really, really cool.
I don't know. I wonder, like, Stranger Things and stuff. Like kids in the 80s solving supernatural things. Like, I feel like a lot of people could get behind this, but
That's
maybe
true.
I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Like,
it's, well, okay, so there's that Tales from the Loop.
you're not kids, I guess, but yeah, you're.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. You're adults in this. But I would do this before I do Tales from the Loop or Things from the Flood.
That's the sequel. Yeah.
Not that those games are bad. They're quite good, and they also have very great art direction. But I think if the kind of game experience you want is a creepy, if you want that kind of narrative, this gives you way more tools to practically achieve that kind of narrative than those games do. And again, those aren't bad games, but I think this does it better.
Yeah.
In that way.
Public access, $15, Drive Through RPG. There will be links down below. Check it out. I think it's totally worth the money, and I would definitely want to play this. I think it's a lot of fun. Any final thoughts, Lex?
It might not be for you, but if it's for you, it's for you. Listen. That's public access.
There you go.